In today's show, we're going to build a PowerApps Tracker App. The idea here is we're going to collect some information and we're going to have repetitive information. So it's going to be like session 1, session 2, session 3. So boom, 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 boom. We're going to grab all that data. We're going to add row numbers to it as we put it in a collection. Ooh, but we're not going to do it the way you think. It's even better. What? We're going to sum it. We're going to average it. And then we're going to save it all off to data source. And we're going to send an email report of it. So the idea is to, track an entire work session. Should be fun. Should be fast. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911. Those guys. And today, we're going to build a PowerApps Tracker App. And what are we going to track? We're going to track my children's juggling. So my kids love to juggle. They love to play soccer, right? So not this type of juggling, but that soccer ball stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of give them the ability to start a session. And then for every run of it, so like my oldest, he has to do 1,000 every day. So he's like, hey, I did 275, I did 812, I did 306. And so we're going to count all those individual runs. We're going to time the difference between them. We're going to sum up the data. We're going to average the data. We're also going to do a really complicated but important little trick around how to add row numbers, right? Because he's going to put all this data in there. You're like, well, you just do a counter and add the rows. But what if he deletes a row? So what we're going to do is every time that they add a row or delete the row, we're going to repopulate the collection with row numbers. So kind of an interesting little, way to go at it, but it works out pretty well. So with all that blah, 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 let's switch over to my desktop. Let's walk through the app, and then we'll go and build the app together. Here we've got the app. And all I'm really doing here is I'm going to have them choose their name, right? And we're going to use Chewy and Ferguson because we can't use my kid's name. We don't want to make anybody at YouTube mad. So we're going to say Chewy. If he wants to leave any notes about, I was really tired because I already played a game today, or, blah, 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 they could have notes, but notes are optional. So they're going to say start a session. And so when they start a session, oh, did you hear that? I give them a little pep talk, right? That's based off last week's video on how to add sound effects into your Power Apps. So fun. And then we're going to say, all right, the first run, they did 24 jugs, whatever that is. We hit save. Good job, buddy. That puts it in there and it adds a row. Very cool. We're going to add 44. Good job, buddy. And so because it was a larger number, I'm playing a sound that says good job, buddy. But what if he messes up this time? He does 3. Concentrate. You got this. A little pep talk. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of a fun way to do it. And honestly, when I give the app to the kids, because the kids have already used it a couple of times, but when they get it, I'm going to add some more immature noises in there. If you can imagine what young children, young boys especially, like to talk about, then you know what the type of sound effects are going to be. Anyway, we'll have a little fun with that. But you can see down here, we're counting the total touches because told you the oldest is trying to get to 1,000 a day, which actually the kid can do 1,000 in one session, which is crazy. So we probably need to up that number, but another story. But so then that way he can track this, and then we're going to track his average touches. I'm also tracking the time between, just so he can get an idea. And this is more for the younger one who tends to get a little lost along the way. So, helping him see that he's wasting a bunch of time. He could have playing video games if he just, concentrate here. Huh? Who knows if it works. But the other interesting thing I did here, let me add a couple more real quick. Good job, buddy. Is back to this row number thing, right? So we're adding the different rows. I'm using the row number to do the banding. That's how it's, white, gray. The next one would be white. Good job, buddy. And then the next one obviously would be gray. Good job, buddy. But we're doing that with row numbers, but what happens if we delete row number 3, right? Is that going to mess everything up? Because a lot of times when people do row numbers, they're static, and if they delete 3, they're like, nothing looks right. Let's delete 3, see what happens. Ooh, look at that. My row number's all repopulated. What? That's right. So that's probably the most complicated new thing that I want to show you guys. I want to show you that one for a long time, so we're going to do that. And then, of course, when you hit finish session, all we're going to do here is I'm saving it off to SharePoint, or my data source, right? It's not SharePoint specific, but I'm saving it to a data source. And then I'm emailing me and Nicola a report, so then that way we can look at it and be like, hey, good job today. Your averages are up, or you got it done faster, or that type of stuff, right? So we can continue to add positive reinforcement to the kids. The other thing I'm doing here, the reason I'm saving both the master data, because in the master record, you'll see I'm just saving kind of the pertinent, what day did you do it? What child did it? And how long did it take? How many juggles did you do? Right? I'm saving the high level data, but we're going to save all this detailed data as well, because I think this might finally be the data set that, I'll develop over the next few weeks for the kids. And then I'm going to try and build my first Power BI report using this data set. And of course, I'll share that with you guys. So Woo! All right, I'm excited. You're excited, I hope. And if not, well, you probably already hung up, so it doesn't matter. Those of you who are still here are excited. So let's talk a little bit about this app. I'm going to show you a few things, and then we're going to build some of the framework maybe kind of together. But so the idea here, this is just a simple drop down with Chewy and Ferguson. Session notes is just a multi-line text entry. I probably mean to make this a maximum length of like 250 or something because I just don't want the kids to write me a book in there, quite frankly. And so then now, if we go here to start session, we're going to see that I'm going to do a few things, okay? So this first one here, right, let's kind of start from the outside in, is we're going to patch the data to our SharePoint list. So let's look at that SharePoint list real quick. And so here you can see the data, right? We have a title column. That's where I'm going to track the kid's name, the session start, any session notes, the session end, their total touches, and their average touches, right? And so like the youngest one, this is actually his first real run. So you can see he did 155, right? He only does 150 every time, and he averaged 3.52. Not great, but it's progress. So here you can see settings. I just want to show you because you guys always ask, what does the list look like? In reality, what it's going to be is a bunch of date and time columns. So session start is a date and time and session end is a date and time. And I kept the time on both those because I do want to be able to calculate that total time spent juggling. Session notes and then total touches and average touches are just both number fields. So pretty straightforward. So that's what this is going to do. This is going to patch. It's going to save this data into that SharePoint list. Now you notice here I'm set var record ID. Because what I want to do though is after I patch that record, when I create that new record, I want to grab its SharePoint ID. So then that way I can use that to tie the children, right? The detailed run information back to which session these were part of. So I'm just putting that in a variable. It says set var record ID. And what it's doing is it's saying take the output of this and just grab the ID column. So whatever record ID they create, grab that number, put that in that variable so we can use it later. Then I'm doing set var sound. This is just a fun one to remind you that, you know, variables can be even media. So I added a bunch of different little media over here and you can see like, let's get her done right there. So the variable is the media and we're going to use that in the audio player on the other side. I'm resetting audio 5. That's the name of the audio player. And then we're setting false, setting true. Remember that toggle is what causes the audio player to play. And then we navigate to tracking. So let's create this session and just see it, right? So we'll say this is for Ferguson and video demo. We'll say start session. Let's get her done. Very fun. Very fun. And if we go back over here and let's just make sure that that jumped in like we expected it to, Ferguson. So there's our session start, our session notes. Perfect. Okay. And remember, as I'm going through this app, if you just want to download this working app because you want to track your children's soccer juggling also, I get that. No, but if you want to grab any of the concepts, remember, you can go to training.poweraapps911.com, sign up for the curated library, and you can download this and a whole bunch of other apps that I built. You know, pretty fun. All right, so number of juggles. The only thing I did to this one that you might not immediately have thought of was I set the format to number so you can only enter numbers. But the other nice thing about this is on the mobile phone, when they click on this field, it brings up the number keypad instead of making them the text, them having to hit the button. So maybe I'll put a screenshot up there if I remember. But that's the nice thing about making this a number only field. It makes the mobile experience easier. And so every time that they do this, we're going to hit save. And right now the button is disabled. The reason for that is the display mode is, hey, if text input 2 is blank, set it to disabled. If not, edit. I don't want them saving blank records. That'll mess their averages up. Ew. And technically with juggling, I don't start counting until they get to 1. So there's no 0 juggles. All right. So there you go. And so then if we go to on select here, so now we're gonna have a little more fun. So the first thing I did was I said, hey, set var sound. That's our variable that has that sound effect in it. If text input 2 is greater than the last record, right? So remember that cold juggles, this is where we're putting in, we're going to save this stuff in just a second. We're going to see that in a minute. But the last record of that, what I want to do, I'm going to grab the last row, grab the touches column. And so that'll be 5, 15, 412, whatever it might be. Is that number greater than the number they just entered? If that number is less than, then we're going to say, hey, good job, buddy, right? So if they did more this time, then good job, buddy. If they didn't, we're going to say, concentrate. You got this, right? It's one of those things I always try to remind them, right? Take a deep breath, those type of, you got this, you're cool. So we're going to set the variable back to the right sound effect. We're going to reset it we're going to play the sound, right? Remember that was last week's video. I'm not going to go into that in more detail, how that works, but that's what I did. So then now we're going to collect cold juggles. So this is going to create a collection called cold juggles. We're going to set a column called touches, and we're going to set that to the number they just typed in. We're going to wrap that in value because we want it to be a number, right? Remember, if you take text input 2.text and you take the text representation of that, even if they type in 12, it is the text 12. We need the number or the value 12, so we have to wrap it in this function so we can do all of our math fun later. Submitted time, so when do they do this? We're going to grab right now. And then the parent ID is that ID that we set earlier. So in that way, remember that's the session ID, so we can tie this data together later, right? You've probably seen that before. If you haven't, I'll put a link to a video called Save Data. And so that one is one where I walk through that kind of in slower detail. So then what I'm going to do, this right here, this is the thing that I've wanted to share with you guys for a long time. This is the most complex part of here, right? Nerd alert. But so the idea here is that my collection, I wanted those numbers, right? I wanted row numbers, and there's no row number function. There's no gallery number function, maybe one day. But today, if we want row numbers, we have to give them to ourselves. And a lot of times what people do is they'll just have like a counter variable and they'll just kind of patch that. But then when they delete, like we talked about, chaos breaks out. So what me and the team like to do, and I actually got the inspiration, the nut, right? Brian Dang and I worked on this, right? Mr. Dang, we worked on this long years ago to like get this to be the happy little thing it is. But this is what it is. So what you're going to do is you're going to say for all the records in cold juggles, we're going to add a new row to a new collection called temp collection. And it's going to basically go through and count the number of rows in the temp collection. And then it's going to, it's going to count all the rows in cold juggles. And it's going to increment that number by 1. And then it's going to make that the new row number. So, don't overthink this. The good news is if you use this, if you steal this from me or from Brian, as he, like I said, he helped me a lot with this. Then the idea here is that you take the collection you want to add row numbers to. You use this temp collection. So you would leave this alone, and this alone. Leave these 3 alone. And just replace your collection name here and your collection name here. And then this will magically add a column called row to your collection with the number. But remember, it's adding that. It's not changing. This code does not change cold juggles because for all can't change the collection it's looping through. So it changes temp collection. So then what I do is once I'm done with this, I just say, hey, clear collect. So wipe out everything that was in cold juggles and just put what's in temp collection. So I'm putting it back. And this is just a common thing that I do to like flip the data on its head so that we can get the data the way we need it to. But this is adding it to cold juggles. And if we see this, so if we say play, we type in 55, we say save. Good job, buddy. And then we'll do 44, save, concentrate. You got this. All right. And so then now if we look at that cold collection, you're going to see, we wrote this parent ID 9. The submitted time, and I'm keeping seconds because that's important to something else I'm doing. Touches, and then there's the row number magic. So that is all being derived from this little chunk of code, right? And one of the things I always forget is to, after I do this, make sure you clear the temp collection, right? So you don't start over with that. If you don't do that, what ends up happening is you end up with duplicate data and it gets real confusing. So common mistake. But that section of blue, that is everything we're using to create the collection. And then down here, we're resetting it, text input 2 back to blank. So they have to enter a new amount. So they can't accidentally add 55 5 times in a row. Okay, now if you're looking at that, you're like, all right, I kind of get that. You kind of don't. That's okay. Don't overthink it. Just put your values. Remember, you just go change. Really what you're after is this for all, right? You're after this. Change your cold juggles here and your cold juggles here. Change these to your collection name, and then you're in business. Now, if we look at the delete here, I'm going to kind of skip ahead. What you're going to see here is that I wanted to be able to renumber it. Remember, we deleted the 3, we deleted 1 out of the middle earlier. So what I do there is I remove it from the collection. Now the row numbers would all be messed up, and then we just rerun this process, and it just puts in new row numbers, but it renumbers everything for us. So this is how we kind of fix all of that. Okay. Once again, don't overthink it. Just know that when you delete, take it out of the collection, and then just run this chunk of code, because this code is set up to reestablish your collection for you over and over again. Or reestablish that row number in your collection, I should say. All right, so that does that. If we look, our gallery here is just using items. Its items are just cold juggles. So it's just getting all the juggles. Then this is just this item touches, which was the number out of here. Second since last juggle, that is using our date diff, right? We did some math recently. And so this is just date diff, and we're getting the previous rows. This is why I needed row numbers right here. I wanted to be able to grab the previous row and so we're doing a lookup to get the previous row right there. And then we're just grabbing its submitted time. And we're just saying take whatever that submitted time was, subtract this one in seconds. And that's how we know that there was 4-second difference here. Right? And if we add another round here, it's gonna be a big number, right? 55. Good job, buddy. So we had 165 seconds. But if we do another one,
concentrate.
4
you
seconds.
Got this.
Apparently that's as fast as I can do
concentrate.
this. 3
you got
seconds.
this.
There you go. So that is how we are calculating the seconds since their last attempt. This wasn't important really to my kids. This was more a thing for me to show you guys, because one of the things that I find when I answer questions and talk to you all is you're really big into trying to use timers to time stuff like this. I never do that. Timers do what timers want to do, right? They can kind of be paused. What if they close the app? What if they switch screens? What if they get a phone call? The timer gets really confused. So all I ever do is I just concentrate on getting, the submitted time. So every time they submit one, I'm grabbing that time. And then we're just going to do the math to take the submitted time of one versus the submitted time of the other. Whether you're measuring that in seconds, minutes, days, weeks, years, I don't care. That's the way I always think about it. So that's why we put that in the app for you. The same with the row number. I needed the row number to do the math, but my kids don't actually need that. So the other thing to remember is that you're like, well, how does this work on the very first record? Well, when it looks up this on the very first pass, it's just blank. That's why you see the first line has nothing. And if I wanted, I could probably have done something like, I could even do something, let's see. I won't write it, but you could do like an if there, say, hey, if this is blank, then do this. If not, then show the real value, right? So maybe it says first run or something like that. I don't know. You get the idea. Or you could be really fancy, like, hey, if this is the first record in the collection, then go fetch the session start time. Remember on the first screen, we grabbed the session start time. It'd be super fancy. Grab that if you really wanted to know how fast they got started. Okay, rounding down the bottom here, you've got these. And so here we are total touches is really just the sum of cold juggles touches. So we're just adding up that touches column. That gets us our total. And then we're just rounding. We're going to say take total, divide it by the number of rows. So how many tries did it take the kids? And then we're using the round function here. So because it's getting really long, like 0.66667 type of stuff. And so this just says round the number to 2 decimal places. That's why you're seeing 31.6. If we add, I don't know, let's just add
Good job,
one.
buddy.
We'll mess
Concentrate.
this up.
You got
this. It's just doing some rounding there to make our lives, make it look a little cleaner for the kids. Now you notice here I'm using the with function. I have a whole video on that if you've never used it. The with function, the idea is that anytime you look at your code and you're like, hey, I'm doing this sum twice, that's not efficient. I don't like that. So get yourself in the habit of using with, so we can just calculate the sum one time. We're storing it in X total. So then we're showing X total here, and then we're rounding X total here. Performance-wise, it didn't really make any noticeable difference in my app, but it was more correct to do, and it gets me in the habit. So in those bigger, more complicated apps, I am doing a good job of thinking about using with. I'm not trying to use with for the first time on an app that's got 4,000 lines of code. I'm using it all the time here, so I feel really comfortable with it. So be my hint to you. All right, last but not least, we're going to go down here and we're going to finish the session. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to patch over to SharePoint. Where does the patch end? Right here. So we're going to patch to Jungle Tracker main, this guy, right? What we're trying to do is we're just trying to add in the session end. So I have an end time, and then the total touches, and then the average touches. So I don't have to add all that up again. Now, if I was heeding my own advice, that should have had a with function also, but I thought that made it too complicated for you. So, but yeah, technically that should have a with. Then I'm saving that entire record into var final because in a second, I want to be able to use that record. So that is why I wanted to have all of this data available to me. Look at all the data. So it makes it so I don't have to redo all my calculations again. That's why I grabbed all that. So then now we've got, we're going to collect. One of the things that we talk about a lot, or I see people mention all the time that we don't cover, I don't think I've ever covered here, honestly, is that one of the other ways that you can use the collect function is you can say, hey, I want to collect to a data source. In this case, my details SharePoint list, right? So there's the details list. We're keeping all the pieces. And here real quick, I will post on the screen so you can see what it looks like. As you can see, it's just a bunch of number columns. Woo! Right? But there you go. But so what this is saying is, hey, I want to collect to the jungle tracker details, and I want to write cold juggles. Juggles, not jungles, juggles. So with cold juggles, the idea here is that if the collections columns match exactly, right, like to the capitalizations, the spellings, the types, everything, then you can write a collection back to a data source directly without having to do a for all like we typically do. So I've used this for a long time. I always find that this is harder than it seems like it should be because you have to get those columns exact. But technically this works, right? And the reason this has to be so exact, if we go over here and we go back and let's just add a new column, like, oh, you know what? My kids really want me to track, time of day. So we make a new one, sky color. I don't know, right? And they're like, hey, track red. So notice right now this all of a sudden complains, and if we go back in here, what it's going to tell me, the specified column sky color does not exist. So in this instance, it will just let us power through it because it's like, oh, no big deal. But if the column names were mismatched in any way, you have a lot of troubles using this technique. But as long as my column names are exactly right, which in this case, we're going to make them back to exactly right, then we should be good. Now, you notice here, I just deleted that column, but it's still complaining. This is PowerApps not being very smart. So PowerApps doesn't realize that the schema of that collection changed and we lost that column. But if you file, save, close, right, what I refer to as rebooting PowerApps, and then open the app back up, it'll be happy. So I'm not going to do that because it'll waste like 5 minutes of video, but you get the idea. Anyway, so since these two match, and what I had to do was just made sure that, notice over here, like row was spelled with a lowercase r because row was spelled with a lowercase r over here. So I wanted to make sure they were 1-for-1 match. But once I did that, this just goes straight over there. So kind of a neat little trick. I want to make sure you guys saw that. So then I clear cold juggles, right? I don't want to have the next kid, if the next kid picks up the phone and starts using it to do his or her, or both my kids are boys, so just his, then that would clear it out. We reset the control, we reset the text input. And then last but not least, we're going to, let's go right here. We're going to send an email to Nicola and I. We're going to do the selected value. So this would say Chewy just finished 412 juggles. They averaged, and then notice we're using var final. This is why I set this to a variable, so I could just reference this variables field for total touches, average touches, and then down here, and it took date diff var final session start, var final session end in minutes. So how many minutes did it take them? And then a good job. So that's a really fun, important way to, be able to kind of do this. The idea here is I wanted to introduce you guys, to this idea of a tracker app. I know a lot of us have a lot of different types of activities. Like we've used this for manufacturing customers to track time on the assembly line, assembling packets of goods. We've used this in, a lot of other scenarios. So I thought this was a good, fun way to kind of show you guys how to do this. Remember the row numbers for collections, that's a big deal. Hopefully you go back, study that, or steal that, and don't even think about it again. This adds row numbers, yay! And let's just show you that. Let's prove how that would work. So I'm gonna go over here, let's make ourselves a new screen. I'm gonna insert a button, and then we're just gonna say, hey, you, collect, fun, and then we'll just do, so we'll do that, right? And now we know if we press this button a bunch of times, So now Fun has a bunch of columns. The data's the same, we don't care, but I made a collection, right? Okay. So now to add row numbers to that, let's just do this again together. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over here because I can't write that code off the top of my head, I promise. We'll go over here. Okay, and so we're going to grab this code. Oh, not that code. We're going to grab this code. And we're going to grab all of this, and we're going to have to make a couple of slight changes because I'm already using the code in the app, but that's okay. So we're going to go over here. We're going to go back to button 5. We're going to paste this in. And I'm going to change these to temp collection 1 because I've already got temp collection in my app and I won't break it. So there we go, there we go, there we go, there we go. Okay, so they're all such a temp collection 1. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to just say, instead of juggles, we're going to say fun. And then fun right here. Now it's complaining, because I didn't change this one to fun. There you go. So I had to change temp collection 1. You could use temp collection if it's the first time in your app. If it's the second time, like mine, you got to make it a different temp collection. And then you just change fun in those 3 places. And now if we say play and we press the button, now if we look at our friend fun, we've got amount, color, name, and row number. Yes. Okay. So I just want to put that in there. I thought that was just a nice little bonus. I was like, I told you it was super simple, but that's literally all we did to add row numbers. And the same thing, when we deleted it, what did we do? We fixed fun, right? We deleted a row out of fun, and then we just re-put in the row numbers, and it worked. Okay, I think that's enough for today. That's like crazy chaos, I know, but that was hopefully a lot of fun in the name of crazy chaos. If you have any questions, comments, any of that fun stuff, leave them below. I'm happy to help. Remember, if you go to training.powerapps911.com, you can sign up for the curated library, and you could just download this working app so you could steal that code without having to type it all in. Also, speaking of training.powerapps911.com, we've got a couple live classes coming up here. So February, whatever that is, we're going to do a live run of my app builder. So that's my class. If you're a fake it until you make it type of person, then come spend some time and learn in that class. That class will make you amazing and will teach you all the things, right? It's try to expose you to everything the Power Apps and Power Automate can do. And then a couple weeks after that, we're going to run the Dataverse for Teams class. So if you're like, hey, I want to be able to do all this fun stuff, but in a Dataverse world, then we're going to run that class. The great things about the live classes versus the on-demand is it's me. No, well, both of them are me. But you actually get to interact. So you're going to take it, you're going to sign up via Teams, you can ask questions, comments, you can make fun of me actually live during the class. So it's a lot of fun. All right, that is enough blah, blah, blah. So with all that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day. Before you go, be sure to click on the subscribe button over here so that way you'll be notified when new videos come out. If you need any help or you want to work together, whether your problem is big or small, check us out at PowerApps 911. We do it all. I rhymed. Or if you're looking for more formal training offerings, we have those linked up here somewhere. So check them out. Thanks and have a great day.